December 7, 1941, Honolulu. The sun isn't fully up yet. In our timeline, 353 Japanese aircraft are already in the air, and in about 2 hours, 2,403 Americans are dead. But hold that image. Now erase it. Imagine Admiral Yamamoto never gets the green light, the fleet turns back. That's the split. One quiet Sunday morning. That's all it takes. Let's run both timelines side by side. Real world first, then the alternate. Real world, December 8, 1941. FDR stands before Congress and asks for a declaration of war. It passes 82-0 in the Senate. Alternate world, December 8, 1941. FDR is still at his desk in the White House. There is no speech. There's nothing to say. Here's something people forget. Before Pearl Harbor, most Americans did not want to fight in Europe at all. The America First movement had serious traction. Charles Lindbergh was drawing huge crowds to anti-war rallies in 1941. Pearl Harbor didn't just start a war, it ended a debate that had been raging for 2 years. Without it, that debate keeps going, and it gets ugly. Real world, 1942. The US war machine kicks into gear. Factories convert overnight. Women enter the workforce by the millions. Alternate world, 1942. The US economy is still technically at peace. Lend-Lease is shipping supplies to Britain, but it's a half measure. Congress keeps cutting the budget. Britain is surviving. Barely. Churchill is still begging Washington for more. And Washington keeps stalling. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, and this is where it gets really consequential, Germany launches Operation Barbarossa in June 1941. That part doesn't change. Germany invades the Soviet Union with or without Pearl Harbor. That's a fixed point. The question is what resources the Soviets have to fight back. Real world, American Lend-Lease to the USSR explodes after December 41. Trucks, food, boots, telephone wire. The kind of stuff that wins wars. Alternate world. Lend-Lease to the USSR exists, but it's throttled. Congress sees the Soviets as communist enemies almost as much as Nazi enemies. Stalin knows this. He's negotiating with everyone he can, trying to buy time. Now. Real world, mid-1942. The Pacific War is grinding along. The Battle of Midway happens in June. The US sinks 4 Japanese carriers. It's a turning point. Alternate world, mid-1942. No Pacific War means no Midway. Japan's navy is fully intact. And it's looking south, at Australia, at India, at the oil fields of the Dutch East Indies. Japan still needs oil. That pressure doesn't go away just because they didn't bomb Pearl Harbor. In 1941, the US had cut off nearly all oil exports to Japan. That embargo stays in place. Japan is running out of time regardless. So in the alternate timeline, Japan likely still moves into Southeast Asia, still seizes Dutch colonial oil fields, still clashes with British forces. But here's the key difference. No attack on American soil means no American declaration of war on Japan. Not yet. And under the tripartite pact, Germany had to declare war on the US only if America attacked Japan first. Not the other way around. Hitler actually declared war on the US 4 days after Pearl Harbor in our timeline. He didn't have to. He chose to. Wild decision. Without Pearl Harbor, Germany has no reason to make that call, and every reason not to. The US stays out of Europe. Real world, November 1942. Operation Torch. Americans land in North Africa. The Western Front begins to open. Alternate world, November 1942. No American troops in North Africa. The British are stretched impossibly thin across 2 continents. Rommel is still in North Africa. And without American reinforcement, he has a real shot at Egypt. Egypt, Suez, Middle Eastern oil. Those aren't abstract stakes. That's the whole war. There's a version of this alternate world where Germany takes Egypt and links up with Japan in the Indian Ocean by 1943. It's not guaranteed, but it's not crazy either. Back to the real timeline. 1943. Stalingrad. Germany's 6th Army is destroyed. The Eastern Front starts to turn. That battle is partly won on American Lend-Lease trucks. Seriously, Soviet logistics at Stalingrad depended heavily on US vehicles. Alternate world, 1943. The USSR might still win at the Stalingrad. Soviet troops were extraordinary, but it costs more, takes longer, maybe a lot longer. Every month the Eastern Front drags on is a month the German war machine is still functional. That matters enormously. Now here's something nobody talks about. The Holocaust. In the real timeline, American entry didn't stop the Holocaust. The systematic killings began before Pearl Harbor and accelerated regardless. What American entry did do was shorten the war in Europe by, most historians think, somewhere between 1 and 3 years. A longer war in Europe in the alternate timeline means the atrocities continue longer. That's not a small thing to say quietly. It's enormous. Real world, June 1944. D-Day, 156,000 Allied troops land in Normandy. The Western Front cracks open. Alternate world, June 1944. There is no D-Day. Not like that. Britain can't mount an invasion of continental Europe without American industrial power and American troops. So who beats Germany? In this alternate world, the most likely answer is the Soviet Union. Eventually. Alone. And that changes everything about what comes after. Real world, 1945. Germany surrenders. Europe is divided. The US and USSR each occupy zones. The Cold War begins, but it begins with two roughly matched powers. Alternate world, 1945 or maybe 1946. Germany still falls, but Soviet forces have reached far further west than they did in our timeline. France maybe. The whole post-war map of Europe looks different. The Iron Curtain falls further west. More countries under Soviet influence, possibly including parts of Germany that we think of as West Germany. Real world, West Germany becomes a US ally, rebuilds fast, joins NATO by 1955. Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle. Alternate world. There may not be a West Germany in the same form. The country might be unified under Soviet influence or partitioned differently or partly occupied by a weakened Britain for decades. Now let's check in on the Pacific. Real world, August 1945. 2 atomic bombs, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrenders. Alternate world. No Pacific War with the US means, almost certainly, no atom bomb dropped on Japan. The Manhattan Project still happens probably, but the decision to use it requires a very different political context. Japan, in the alternate timeline, is still at war, just not with the United States. It's fighting in China, in Southeast Asia, against British colonial forces. The Chinese theater is brutal and grinding. It was in our timeline too, 14 years of Sino-Japanese War, 1931 to 1945. That part doesn't disappear. Here's a genuinely interesting question. Does Japan win in China if there's no American pressure from the East? Maybe. But China is vast, its resistance was fierce, and Japan never found a way to fully subdue it, even when it was their only major ground war. The most likely outcome in the alternate timeline. Japan occupies coastal China and most of Southeast Asia. It controls most of the Pacific. It does not conquer the continent, so you have two emerging empires in the alternate 1945, a Soviet-dominated Eurasia stretching from Berlin to Vladivostok, and a Japanese-dominated Pacific stretching from Tokyo to Singapore. And the United States, still powerful, still industrially enormous, but without a world war to pull it out of the Great Depression's shadow. Wait, actually. Let's pause on that. The US didn't fully recover from the Depression until wartime spending kicked in. Without entering the war fully, that fiscal stimulus either comes from somewhere else or it doesn't come. Unemployment in the US in 1940 was still around 14%. The war fixed that. Without the war, you're looking at a prolonged economic malaise, possibly into the late 1940s. That changes domestic politics dramatically. A poorer, more isolationist America in the late 1940s. That's a very different animal. Real world, 1947. Truman Doctrine, Marshall Plan. The US commits to rebuilding Europe and containing the Soviet Union. $13 billion in today's money. Alternate world, 1947. America is not in that posture. The Marshall Plan either doesn't exist or is a fraction of its real size. Europe rebuilds much more slowly and much more in the Soviet orbit. France in this world might go communist. Italy probably does. The Italian Communist Party was the largest in Western Europe in 1946. Our Marshall Plan. Money is a big part of why they lost the 1948 election. A communist Italy and France changes NATO. Actually, there probably isn't a NATO. Who builds it and why, if America's half asleep? Real world. The Korean War, 1950. North Korea invades South Korea. The US leads a UN coalition to push back. It works eventually. Alternate world, 1950. North Korea still invades. But this time the US either doesn't respond or responds half-heartedly. South Korea probably falls. A unified communist Korea changes the entire strategic calculus in East Asia. Japan's security situation becomes much more precarious. And here's the irony. In the alternate timeline where Japan never attacks Pearl Harbor, Japan may end up in a far more dangerous geopolitical position by 1950 than in the real world. In our timeline, Japan lost the war, was occupied, was rebuilt by the US, and became one of the most prosperous countries in the world. That occupation was brutal in some ways, but the outcome was extraordinary. In the alternate world, Japan holds on to its empire, but empires are expensive. Maintaining control of Southeast Asia against constant resistance is a drain. Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaya. These places didn't want Japanese occupation any more than they wanted European colonialism. The resistance would have been fierce and sustained. There's no guarantee Japan holds this empire past the mid-1950s. Empires were collapsing globally even in our timeline. Back to Europe. Real world, 1949. The Soviet Union tests its first atomic bomb. The nuclear arms race begins. Alternate world, 1949. The Soviets still get the bomb. They had it by 49, partly from espionage, not just their own research. That part probably doesn't change much. But the geopolitical context is completely different. In our world, both superpowers had massive military presences and a divided Germany as the focal point of tension. In the alternate world, the tension is three-way. The USSR dominates most of Eurasia. The US is retreating into its own hemisphere. Japan is trying to hold its Pacific empire together. That's not a Cold War. That's something more complicated and arguably more dangerous. Three competing power centers is inherently less stable than two. Now let's slow down and think about ordinary people. Real world, 1950s, American suburbia, GI Bill, veterans going to college, baby boom, the whole thing. That prosperity was directly tied to wartime industrial buildup, veteran benefits, and a global economic position built on being the world's arsenal for 5 years. Alternate world, 1950s. American families are doing okay. The US was always a rich country, but the post-war boom is muted. The GI Bill doesn't exist because there are barely any GIs. The civil rights movement is interesting in this world. In our timeline, it was partly catalyzed by the moral contradiction of Black Americans fighting for freedom abroad while being denied it at home. Without that mass military service experience, without that specific injustice, the civil rights movement might look different. Not absent Toyos. The underlying injustice still exists, but the timing and the catalyst change. There's no clean answer here. This is one of those places where the alternate timeline isn't better or worse, just different. Stranger. Let's check the two timelines at maximum divergence. Let's say 1960, real world, 1960. The US and USSR are locked in the Cold War. Tense, sometimes terrifying, but stable. Mutually assured destruction keeps the peace, oddly enough. Decolonization is accelerating. India is independent. African nations are gaining independence. The world is changing, but there's a framework for it. Alternate world, 1960. Three power blocks, all unstable. The Soviet bloc controls most of Europe and stretches into the Middle East. Japan's empire is fraying. The US is richer than anyone but politically paralyzed. The United Nations might not exist, or it's a much weaker body. Its founding was driven by the Allied coalition that won World War II together. Without American engagement, that coalition looks very different. Bretton Woods doesn't happen in this alternate world, or happens very differently. That was the 1944 agreement that made the US dollar the world's reserve currency. American economic hegemony was built on that meeting. The global financial order in the alternate world is fragmented, multiple currencies competing. Trade is harder, growth is slower. Here's a thought that sounds strange at first. The real world's Cold War, for all its horror and proxy wars, created a kind of stability. Alliances were clear. Rules existed. Trade flowed in a coherent system. The alternate world might actually be more chaotic and more violent at the regional level, even without the one catastrophic moment of Pearl Harbor. Now, both timelines, 1962, real world, the Cuban Missile Crisis. 13 days, the world almost ends. Alternate world, 1962. Cuba might not be a Soviet-aligned state in this world, or it might be something stranger. The entire Western Hemisphere situation looks completely different if there's no strong American foreign policy doctrine. You might actually get a nuclear crisis in a different location, say Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia, between different parties. Not necessarily safer, just differently dangerous. Let's talk about technology. The real space race happened because of the Cold War, American and Soviet prestige competition, Sputnik 1957, Apollo 11 1969. Without the Cold War as it existed, does the space race happen? Probably not on that timeline. Maybe humans don't reach the moon until the 1980s or later. The internet, ARPANET, grew from military and defense research in the 1960s. Without that defense research culture, who knows? The alternate world isn't necessarily technologically backward, but the specific technological path is different. Different pressures produce different innovations. All right, here's where we are. Both timelines, present day, or as close as we can imagine. Real world. The United States is the dominant global power. Democracy spread widely. Imperfectly, inconsistently, but widely. The global economy is deeply integrated. Many things are genuinely good. More people have been lifted out of poverty since 1945 than in all prior human history. That's connected to the system the Second World War produced. Alternate world. The Soviet bloc may still exist, or it may have collapsed under its own economic weight earlier, but in a much messier way, without the stable opposition the Cold War framework provided. Japan might be a different kind of power, possibly more militarized, possibly having gone through a different form of democratic evolution without the post-war American occupation forcing a pacifist constitution. Colonialism in Asia probably ends eventually. It was ending everywhere, but it ends more violently, because there's no clear framework for how it ends. More wars. More chaos. China's story is interesting. Mao comes to power in 1949 in both the timelines. The Chinese Civil War was shaped by domestic forces, not just American intervention. But American recognition and containment policy shaped China's trajectory enormously. Without American engagement, China might have found accommodation with either the Soviets or the Japanese sphere much earlier. Or it might have been more independent sooner. Hard to say. Here's the honest accounting. No Pearl Harbor doesn't mean no World War II. The war in Europe was already happening. The war in Asia was already happening. What Pearl Harbor changed was America's role. And America's role changed everything about how those wars ended and what came after. The alternate world, had Japan stayed quiet that December morning, is almost certainly a world with more Soviet power, less American hegemony, a prolonged and nastier transition out of colonialism, and a messier, more fragmented global order. Is that worse? In some ways, yes. More people probably die in the grinding, unresolved conflicts of that world. The Holocaust potentially lasts longer. In some ways, it might be better. No Hiroshima, no Nagasaki. No atomic precedent set in 1945. The nuclear age might begin differently, more cautiously. American power in our real world also came with American hypocrisy, proxy wars, overthrown governments, Vietnam. The alternate world doesn't have those specific horrors. It just has different ones. That's the thing about history. You don't get to swap atrocities in for clean air. The question the alternate timeline really asks isn't, would it be better without Pearl Harbor? It's, what does American power in the 20th century actually explain? And the answer is a lot, for better and worse. More than almost any other single event of the century, December 7, 1941, shaped the world you live in right now. The ships at Pearl Harbor that morning were already obsolete in some ways. The age of the aircraft carrier had arrived. But what sank with them was American neutrality. And once that sank, it never came back up. Not in the real world. In the alternate world, that Sunday morning is just a Sunday. Quiet, warm, the harbor calm. And somewhere in that quiet morning, the entire 20th century goes a different way. Not better, not worse, just unrecognizable.